Good evening, White Witch 110 here. I have another story to read for you this evening. It's called The Cemetery. So let's get into it. Now, some of this story, actually to tell you before I jump into it, ended up with apple cider vinegar on it. So some of the words are a little bit blurred. Have patience. Is that... There. A historic cemetery on the edge of the city continues to welcome new members. Weeping willows comfort souls when they enter the ornate iron gates. The lone figure of a woman reclines against a cold gray marble headstone. A spray of red roses lays on the fresh earth. She is desperately praying for a sign, only one sign, that he is content on the other side. The year is 1899. From early morning till day's end, she leans upon his stone. The storms of December arrive, and she is still observed reclining on his grave. The snow accumulated quickly. Frozen to the core, she makes no attempt to remove herself from the pain. She will die by his side. He would be there waiting to take her in his arms forever. She was not found until the spring thaw. She was respectfully laid to rest by his side. Over 100 years later, here I stand, gazing at a love story and a deluge of rain. I sense her pain, each agonizing second without his touch. She was imploring her God to bring a conclusion to her torment. In all seasons, she was relentless in her loyalty to him. I could never imagine such a love as that. Rain spills from my umbrella onto the grass below. I regard the blades of green bend to the weight of the droplets. The sound on the material is a great comfort. I can't say for sure how long I stood for how long I stood for, though the sky was losing light. I cannot explain why this grave, among many other stories, held my attention. Was it the cursive writing of their names, or the roses entangled in two hearts? It beckoned for me to approach with reverence. I made a promise to return. I didn't appreciate the reason at that moment. Meandering to my vehicle, I breathed in the peaceful silence surrounding me. Arriving at my simple trailer, I prepared tea to soothe the chill in my bones. I took note of the rain tapping on my window. It sounded like Morse code. What message it was bringing, I didn't know. The pattern of the droplets became a rhythm in my head. The damp weather was expected to continue for the duration of the week. This would not deter me from honoring my pledge to Yolanda and Jeffrey. The necessity to discover their story was compelling. Searching information was not so difficult. They had lived in the 1800s. They came from middle-class families who worked diligently. Jeffrey labored on his family farm, while Yolanda toiled at a local general store as a clerk. They had met when Jeffrey had come to the store for feed. Yolanda had slowly moved around the store to get a better look at this strapping young man. She smiled shyly each time their eyes met. As a friendship was cultivated, a love story began. There weren't many places to take a girl you could court back then. Jeffrey mainly stuck to the church socials and town hall dances. They were a handsome pair, complimenting each other graciously. After a year of courting, Jeffrey requested Yolanda's hand in marriage. Understanding the young man's dedication to his daughter, her father agreed to a short engagement. A booming clap of thunder jolted my concentration. I gazed out my small window at the curtain of rain. I imagined Yolanda in the cemetery, saturated in water, expressly to be by his side. Another rumble across the sky. Water poured at the base of the young maple tree by my trailer. It already towered over my roof. A stream of glowing electricity radiated through the atmosphere and quickly faded. Branches swayed and leaves danced. The gale shook my trailer enough for me to acknowledge its presence. I took time to double-check my windows were closed. The deluge of water bashed my home. Dampness seeped in. I turned on my tiny electric fireplace to disperse the cold. I sat on the floor, blanket around me, rubbing my hands against the heat. Winter's last kick at the can. I pulled over my armchair and fell asleep. When I woke, all was dark, and the rain still beat upon my home. I made a quick sandwich and got back to the computer. The information said they were married in June 1897. The newspaper article mentioned a small ceremony at their local United Church. They moved to the family farm. They were eager to have children. Unfortunately, they were unable to. It was heartbreaking to read this, though pleased it didn't tear them apart. The harsh light from the screen irritated my eyes. I went to the switch to turn the overhead light on. I had no power. Glancing out my window, the entire neighborhood was dark. Luckily, the battery in my computer would last me till I could find out the information I wanted. Flashlights and candles wobbled in windows and doorways. Realizing, though, that I should conserve the battery, not knowing when power would be back up, I shut it down. There wasn't much else to do, so I climbed into bed, trusting power will have been restored by morning. Throughout the night into early morning, the angry sound of thunder inundated our region. Waking, I felt a chill that persisted through the trailer. Time to turn on the fireplace. The storm had moved on, leaving a light rain. Again, I thought of Yolanda laying at his grave. I went out and bought roses, red roses, to place on their grave. Armed with an umbrella, I ran to my car. Throwing the wet dome on the passenger seat, I was off to the shop. From there, I would go straight to the cemetery. I decided this time to drive the length of the cemetery to their resting place. I could see what I perceived as a shadow. It looked to be beneath the tree. But there was no sun. I didn't even cast a shadow myself. The nearer I approached, it registered. It was a person. Placing my vehicle in park, I didn't believe the figure was conscious of my presence. I opened my door slowly, as not to disturb. I stood beside my car, mindful of the location. An indescribable noise resonated behind me. Pivoting, I could locate no reason for it. Peering back, the somber figure had vanished. There was no reasonable explanation for the sight and sound that day. I respectfully positioned the roses at the base of their marble marker. I quietly wished a peaceful eternity. As I turned to leave, I felt a soft tug on my sleeve, which caused me to jump. Twirling round, I found no one. There were no bushes or branches to snag myself on. I ignored the sensation and moved on, promising to return. My mind remained on the woeful image of Yolanda at his grave. In my dream that night, I was an onlooker at the cemetery site. I observed Yolanda sauntering over to his resting place. She put a blanket by the stone, then sat down. She spoke softly to him. I couldn't make out the words, but the expression on her face was loving. Leisurely, the figure of a man materialized. Jeffrey bent down to caress her cheek. She smiled. He then sat beside her, his arms devotedly around her. Jeffrey attempted to console her from the other side. I was abruptly woken by a rushed knocking at my trailer door. The sun was beginning to break the horizon. Groggily, I made my way to the door. There stood a woman with a panicked expression on her face. Without asking a question, I ushered her inside, taking her over to the fireplace. She sat on the floor, rubbing her hands in front of the radiant heat. I grabbed a warm throw from the sofa and wrapped it around her. She smiled. I felt an instant connection with this woman. I made her some tea to warm her insides and made a sandwich as well. She sat with her back against the chair, holding the toasty ceramic mug in both hands. When she was done, she nodded in thanks and took leave. I offered the blanket. Once again she smiled, accepting the token of kindness. It was only after the woman had left I realized she had not uttered a word. I ran to the door and glanced out the window. She was nowhere in sight. I decided she must have taken a path between the trailers instead of the main road. I snatched up a rag from the closet, intending to wipe up any water left behind from her clothes. There was not a drop. The heat from the fireplace must have evaporated it. The precipitation had picked up again. I listened to the rhythm on my roof. I spent the day at home cleaning and purging. When the task was completed, I felt a sense of relief. As another soppy day concluded, I pondered on the touch at the cemetery. Who had attempted to gain my attention? My life to this point was routine. Same thing, same order, 7 days a week. This unexpected change was welcome. Another evening of dreams at the cemetery. Jeffrey still at her side, comforting. Her face is covered by a hood on her cloak. His face is ruggedly handsome. The only words audible to me this time, I am always here. I awake this morning to a clap of thunder above me. The rain is tormental. The other trailer. The torrential rain is obscuring my view of the other trailers. I hear a pop of water in the kitchen. A plop of water in the kitchen. There is a small leak in the corner. I place a bucket to catch the rain until I can have it repaired. Gazing out the window, I wonder how many visitors from yesterday are here. There was something about her that caused me to care more than I should for a stranger. This particular stranger. In hindsight, I should have asked questions. I had to believe she was fine in order to get through my day. But something kept eating at me in regards to the visit. I began to wonder why she had chosen to pass all the others for mine. I needed to nip into the city for a few things. As I went about my business, I was certain I had caught a glimpse of my visitor in my peripheral vision. Climbing into my car, I sat surveying the street. Had I become obsessed? I shook my head, turned the key in the ignition, and left. A quick meal of mac and cheese, I sat at my computer. The screen came to life. I was in shock. Instead of my home screen, an article was visible. The newspaper mentioned a farming accident involving Jeffrey. It stated he fell from the barn roof making a repair. He was found by his young wife, Yolanda. It mentioned that she was inconsolable. As to how this came upon my screen, I don't know. The sky darkened, and sleep began to take its toll. I could no longer fight to keep my eyes open. I prayed my dreams would be different, but they weren't. I found myself at the cemetery, Yolanda and Jeffrey both there, though this time another figure sat near the grave. The couple was attempting to comfort this person. I could not see the face, as the figure was shrouded in a black cloak. Try as I might, I could not position myself at an angle to see its face. As dawn grew closer, the three faded away. I awoke, even more perplexed. Who was the third person? The rain was now a drizzle. Get down, Gizzy. Downloading an app on my phone, I made my way to the cemetery. Hang on. Sorry about that. I needed a drink. Okay. I required an answer to my dreams. I drove directly to the grave. There I stood in my raincoat, droplets cascading off my hood. I pulled up the Spirit Box app on my phone. Why are you in my dreams? What is it that I'm supposed to do? All that came through was static. Try as I did, no response came. Frustrated, I turned the app off. Why won't you speak? Let me know what you want. I can't continue like this. From behind me, I heard a throat cleared. Spinning round, I was greeted by a handsome male figure. It took me only moments to realize he was real. As I opened my mouth to explain, he spoke. No need to explain. I believe we are both here for the identical reason. He began his account of the silhouettes. They had been in my dreams ever since. I informed this gentleman that I now had seen a third. Yes, it appeared last night to me. We both stood in the rain, requiring a conclusion. Staring down at the headstone, we sensed a presence about us. Warmth enveloped us. It was loving. I was pushed from the roof. It was my father. Secretly, he knew I wasn't his son. He pushed me off the roof. He sent her out of the house. She died in my arms, cold and alone. He now haunts us in the afterlife. We need your assistance to rid us of him. It was Jeffrey. What can we do? I asked quietly. In the farmhouse, under the kitchen floorboards, is an envelope. In it is paperwork proving he isn't who he said. With that, Jeffrey vanished. Aidan and I drove our cars to the homestead. We were disappointed, though relieved to discover it was abandoned. We climbed in a window by what would have been the living room. Carefully, we made our way to the kitchen. Down on hands and knees, we tapped the wood, listening for a difference. "Here," he called in excitement. We began to pull up the panel with a butter knife left in the drawer. There it was, just as Jeffrey had said. We sat together on the floor, filled with anticipation. A birth certificate. The name on the document was different from Jeffrey. There was also paperwork for a name change, a death certificate for a woman, and 2 marriage licenses. The most unsettling item was a knife. We instantly realized the brown coating had been blood. "What was that?" I whispered to my new friend. "Likely the wind," he replied. "No, it sounded like footsteps in the living room," I told him. We sat quietly, intently listening. He finally agreed. "Let's get out of here." Aidan grabbed the envelope and pushed through the kitchen door. He followed me to a cafe in the city where we attempted to decipher these documents. It appeared his father had been born a Waters. He changed his last name the year before his marriage to Townsend. He was married 3 years when his first wife passed. 4 months later, he married again. There was a birth certificate for Jeffrey with only his mother's name. The date was before his parents were wed. The knife was leading us to believe he may have killed his first wife. Stuck behind his birth certificate was another name change. It was his second wife. Her name had been changed to Jeffrey's mother's name. None of this made sense. "Aidan, look." I handed him the photo. Triplets. His mother was one of 3. So the sister took his mom's spot. But why change your name? There was a tidy sum of money coming to his mother. Searching the paper, a note was found. He intended to marry, but her sister. All this so they would collect the inheritance. "I suppose things weren't well investigated back then," Aidan said. "So he killed her, burying her as the sister." "Why didn't the other triplet step forward?" I inquired. "Because she was to get a cut. Being the eldest of the 3, Jeffrey's mother would receive the largest portion of the estate. So get rid of her, the son, so they would be rich." "Yes, and it appears the other sister died in an accident on the farm," Aidan informed me. We need to get to the cemetery. On our way, my car would not start. Aiden gave me a boost. When we were a couple of miles away, I helplessly watched his car skid off the road in front of me. He was fine, and we were soon back on track. Arriving at the cemetery, we found the gates closed, and this was early. "Someone doesn't want us here," I said, stating once out of my vehicle. "Well, too bad. We're going in," Aiden pronounced to those unseen. He climbed over the fencing and undid the latch of the small door. Rain beat harder the closer we were to the grave. "Jeffrey, we found the envelope with the papers inside. We presume your story is on these pages," I began. "The man said to be your father changed his last name to Townsend. This..." Oh, that really got vinegar on it. "This was..." I can't even make it what that is. "This assured his marriage to your mother. Being poor with the name Waters assured him of nothing. He married your mother, who was already pregnant with you. They were married 3 years when your mother died in childbirth, along with your sibling. Your aunt married your father before she legally changed names to your mother's. This way, they would have all the money. The other sister was said to take her own life. The woman he married died in an accident. She had slipped in the barn and was trampled by a cow. Then he went after you to get the money to himself. I believe he pushed your aunt in the barn. Then there was the knife with the dried blood on it," I concluded. Slowly he appeared. "That is the truth. Aiden brought these facts to the media, and our dreams stopped. As friends, we continued to meet at the cemetery. We discussed what Yolanda and Jeffrey's life would have been like, the sad ending to a love story." Thank you, everyone. Sorry that vinegar kind of messed up some of the words there. It's kind of hard to read in some places. Thank you all for coming by this evening. Greatly appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, please check out my other videos. Anything you like, give it a like. Leave me a comment. Share any of them out that you'd like to. It's much appreciated. While you're here, consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, think about taking that extra step and clicking the notification bell so you'll know the next time that I upload. I do have another story in the wings waiting for to read to you. I hope you'll like that one. So sorry about this one. With the, it did dry up pretty good, but you know what it's like when ink gets wet. So everyone, have a great rest of your evening and have a great Thursday. And until the next time, ciao for now.